talked to my therapist, and she's amazing. Telling her my story raw, literally had an hour booked. She gave me an hour for free. We were just talking freely for 2 hours. And after I told her the story, she was just like, Kia, you know that's a manipulative narcissist, right?
Welcome back to In the Midst podcast. I'm Debbie.
And I'm Kia.
And we're super excited to have you guys join us for our 4th episode. An episode that I'm really excited to talk about, though it's a very painful experience that you will be sharing. And then I will kind of have a bit that I will be sharing at the end as well. And I think in episode 3 we had mentioned that that there, the dating experience online, as well as what we're going to share today, was what birthed In the Midst podcast. So what we're going to be sharing today is really honest and true vulnerability, but it was necessary, and it is what birthed this podcast. So yeah, we're going to get into that. Also, if you guys are following us on Instagram, which is In the Midst Pod, please make sure that you are, because we are having a lot of amazing discussions online, and we want you guys to be a part of that. So take a look at that and follow us there. So we're gonna get into this. This episode is called "Good on Paper: Lessons Learned from Judging a Book by Its Cover." So this is going to be kind of interview style as well. Where I'll be asking you. Initially, I'm going to be asking you a lot of the questions, and you will be answering, and then at the end we'll kind of go into where you ask me some of the a couple of questions. So essentially we're kind of getting into the relationship that came from the dating experience. So Kia, what state of mind were you in before this relationship?
I would say definitely more, or so I thought, a confident place. I was in a place where I was like, okay, I don't want to close myself off to anybody. I want to give myself the opportunity to be more open-minded, meet new people, all of these things, while still also upholding my own standards that I not compromising on my standards, but being open to meeting new people.
Absolutely, yeah. So a good place, essentially. So when you first started dating this person, what did this relationship look like initially?
Honestly, it checked every Christian box that I had, I would say. So. And even a disclaimer for that is, I'm not somebody who's going to be oh, you just go to church, that means you're okay for me. No, it's about character. What's your personality? Do we have anything in common? The basic questions. But he checked all of the Christian boxes. So on a board of a church, I could talk to you freely about God.
Faith and stuff.
About faith and stuff like that. Exactly. We could talk about God together. Consistent conversation all the time. We FaceTime all the time. Saw each other all the time, honestly. And at the beginning, it was just good, consistent, two-way conversation.
It was exciting.
Two-way. It was very exciting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially after being on these apps and literally the bare minimum. It was bare minimum. Bar in Hades.
The bar was in Hades.
Yeah, literally. The bar was in Hades. So it was kind of refreshing to finally meet someone that you could have a meaningful conversation with. Yeah.
Absolutely. I remember you being really excited around that time. So I also remember you mentioning that this was going really well, but that you were beginning to feel a little bit overwhelmed. Yeah. So let's get into what were some of the red flags or things that you began to notice but decided to ignore.
So I would say at first it was kind of moving. It was moving fast. It was honestly moving fast, and not in it was moving fast in a way of this person was oversharing with me in kind of an attempt to be when someone overshares with you, sometimes you might feel indebted to them to also share back with them. By the grace of God, I didn't share everything, but I definitely shared some things that if it was an organic and healthy relationship, whether that be a friendship or a relationship, as you get to know somebody, as you're talking to somebody, that comes out naturally.
Yes.
Whereas it kind of felt by force. This person's letting me know everything, telling me how much of an amazing, just bare love bombs. Just love bombing, what I realized. So I remember even talking to you as well initially and being once he made it out of Hinge cringe.
He made it past Hinge cringe.
Once he made it past Hinge cringe, I was just like, wow, like, Debbie, it's going really well, but I don't know why I'm overwhelmed. Like, it just feels, and I didn't even say the words, it feels too good to be true, but now looking back, I can,
you can see that
but
is what it was.
that didn't even cross my mind of being too good to be true. I was just like, oh, no, it's just very overwhelming, but it's going really well, but I feel anxious. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But I don't know, I overlooked that.
Yeah. No, I understand. And I remember asking about, like, why do you feel overwhelmed? What is it specifically? And you couldn't pinpoint it at that time.
Yeah.
You couldn't really, but that's because at that time you didn't know what you know now, essentially.
Yeah.
So yes. Anything else?
And then another thing, so after being overwhelmed, I realized, like, I kind of put it on myself because I was just like, oh, well, you know, you don't want to, you know, you have a tendency, you can close off sometimes. So, you know, maybe this is just what it feels like to be open. And
that's a good point. You thought you were opening up more.
I thought I was opening up more. So it's like, oh, maybe it's overwhelming because, you know, this is something you're working through.
That's such a good point.
What I chalked it up to. I was just like, no, it's a new experience or whatever.
So you're going to feel this way because you're opening up more. This is something I'm not used to, but
Exactly. So then I guess I would say another initial kind of check in my spirit was then I started to realize, like, this two-way conversation, like, as I mentioned in the beginning, it started slowly becoming a monologue where it was just like, it was no longer like a conversation of like an organic conversation. We're bouncing things off of each other. Like, you talk, I ask you questions, you ask me questions. It was more so like someone bragging on themselves for an hour and then realizing that they were bragging on themselves for an hour and then being like, okay, so what's your plan now? And then me just being there, like,
feeling overwhelmed
and being like, you know, I just had noodles for dinner. Like, why is this, it was just weird. It was just really weird. So I kind of always felt like I was being tested at a point because it was like, no matter what answer I brought to the table, it was just kind of met with like, like,
wow.
Yeah.
Your answers were never good enough.
Exactly.
Like simple conversation starters or conversations you were having or where you provided input, your input wasn't enough.
Yeah.
And in subtle ways too.
Subtle at first.
Yes.
At first, yeah. Definitely. Yeah. And then I guess from there, like, after that initial thing, this is when, like, the major issue starts to kind of...
Like, really big red flags.
Really big red flags that I was repainting green. Like, they started coming out. So the main overarching thing is just manipulation in general. Very manipulative, and someone tried to talk you out of your opinions. So one of the main things that kind of drew me, that kind of drew me in was, like, a value that I had thought we shared. So any normal person is not going to go around and be like, hi, my name's Kia. I've been abstinent for 6 years.
Yeah.
What's your name?
Yeah.
I don't wear that on my chest, like, but that's just a standard that I have. Mm-hmm. So if I'm talking to someone, you're probably not even going to know that if you haven't even made it out of hinge cringe. Like, absolutely. You know what, as it should be though. It's not your business.
Yeah.
So it was to my surprise when this person came to me and was like, oh, I'm abstinent. And there was no mention of that. There was no mention of that in the conversation, like, prior. So I was just like, oh, like, that's interesting. That's because we talk about this all the time. There are a lot of people who, you talk about it. Like,
there's a lot of, so often, especially on the app or when, you know, like, if a guy would get out of hinge cringe, they would talk about, you know, their faith. Like, if you're getting out of hinge cringe, the minimum was like you were Christian. and so, you know, you would talk about your faith and then you kind of reveal those boundaries and then them being like, oh, I can't do that. And then kind of, you know, backing away and fizzles. Yeah. So, of course, in this situation, when he's mentioning it first, it's like, oh, that's refreshing.
Exactly.
That's really refreshing. Like, wow, you're mentioning this? Wow, right. The bar is no longer in Hades. The bar is
slowly moving to the...
above onto earth, but really...
it was depths of hell.
Yeah.
Ben who? Yeah, so that was one of the main things that kind of drew me in at first. So I was just like, oh, wow. We shared this, like, not rare, but, like, something that is rare on that app, to be honest.
Yeah.
So that was something that really had drew me in. But then I realized, like, once it was manipulation at the end of the day. Because then when it was time to set a boundary, my boundary was always trying to be crossed. And, towards the end, like, which we will get to, once this person realized they weren't successful, the whole mask slipped off. The whole mask slipped off, and it was just like, oh, it was a facade the whole time. So yeah, there was a lie about that. And then also another major thing that happened, I guess the overarching thing was just like, there was manipulation, and then there was
blame.
It was manipulation and blame all the time. And I kind of told myself that I was being accountable at times when I was really blaming myself.
Yes.
When something bad was happening, I was always trying to find what I did wrong in it.
Which is like, you're trying to be healthy, like, oh, it's good. You should be taking accountability for things you do. Absolutely. But in this, you were taking accountability that's this person, he should have taken the accountability.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So I guess I'll give an example. Honestly, I'll give an example of something that happened. It's embarrassing if I'm being honest, but it happened. I don't smoke weed. Like, that's a conviction of mine.
Yeah.
Back in the day, 2013, hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
But sorry, just being honest. But like, I have not done this since 2013.
Yeah.
And no desire to. Made that very clear that that's a conviction for me. And this person, same thing. Like, I don't smoke weed. Blah 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 blah. So ended up coming out that this person does smoke weed. And then I remember one time, like, it came out subtly, and then it's just like, oh, but yeah, I'm trying not to.
Self-medicating, like.
Not even that. It was just like, oh, it was a slip up. Like, it was a slip up. I don't actually want to do that. So it's like my mantra of 2021, no one's perfect. So no one's perfect, right? Until there was an incident where we hung out, and my guy gave me candy, and I'm just like, oh, it's candy. So then once it backed down my throat, I'm like, what's this taste? What's this taste? My guy gave me weed. Like,
and gummy.
You gave me a weed gummy. And I was stunned in the moment. But then after time, not even after time, like literally hours later, I was just like, or whatever, 12 hours, I don't know, was just like, hey, I called it out fully. I was just like, I don't appreciate you doing that. I disclose to you, I don't smoke weed. That's completely boundary breaking.
Absolutely.
Don't do that to me. That's very disrespectful.
Absolutely.
And I was met with, but you didn't spit it out though. And I was just like, so am I supposed to like put my finger down my throat and purge it out? What do you mean I didn't spit it out? You don't give that to me. And then instead of saying sorry, I was then met with, but you said you don't smoke weed. I said, okay, so let me make it very clear to you then. I don't smoke weed. I don't eat weed. I don't drink weed. I don't rub CBD oil on my body. I don't do anything with weed. So don't give me weed. That's very disrespectful. And, a normal person would apologize at this point. No, it was met with, are you sure you don't want it? Because you seem a little tense. I know you said you went to therapy before, but maybe you need to go back to work on some forgiveness issues.
Can you imagine? When you told me that? My blood was boiling inside. I was livid. I was like, that is absolutely disgusting. I just couldn't believe it. And it was so interesting in that conversation. And I mean, we'll get into this more too, just what I was noticing about you and how your own demeanor was changing. Because you brought that up, as any friend, any normal person would be like, that is problematic, incredibly problematic. And then you meeting it with, I know it is. Don't worry, it's already been dealt with. And then kind of feeling like, okay, like kind of just feeling like, you were just going to deal with it the way you were going to deal with it, and you weren't really ready to confront it further. You didn't want to go into it more. So, and then also too, I kind of was like, people are not perfect, but, this is, wow, this is something that I ticked off in my brain, like, in my own head, it was just like, wow, strike one. Like, that's, like, honestly, that's strike done.
It's strike done, honestly.
Absolutely strike done.
It's strike done.
But it was just like, that's interesting. And I mean, I remember prior to that, I didn't really like him anyways. I already didn't really like him. There was something about him, something about what you would share about him at times that I was like, he seems arrogant, and I can't stand arrogance. Like, I cannot stand arrogance. That's the one trait I will never put up with. And I just remember thinking to myself, I'm like, this guy sounds a little bit arrogant. But I also always give people the benefit of the doubt to a fault. So that was where I would always give benefit of the doubt. So I gave benefit of the doubt for this guy too.
Yeah.
Initially.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry. Continue into
just some other
other examples, other red flags.
Yeah, and it's so crazy you say that because it's just like, obviously hindsight is 20/20. I know it was arrogance, but I was chalking it up to humor even because I know myself. Like,
yes.
I'm not gonna say I have this arrogant sense of humor, not at all. But I come from like a sarcastic family, and like the humor is dry sometimes.
Of course.
And there's banter here and there. There's a little pick here and there, but it's lighthearted. It's not degrading.
Yeah.
So I remember that at one point it was just like it was humor on my physical appearance. It became like, you have light skin and light eyes. Why do you have like African hair texture? This is coming from an African person, by the way. This is coming from an African person. Like, why do you have African hair texture?
It's a deep-rooted self-hate for me. It is. Lord, set your black people free.
Set your black people free.
Set us free from the colorism and the self-hate.
Like, it's given I'm a good field slave massa. Like, that's what it's given.
Oh, no.
No.
Lord have mercy. Lord have mercy.
No, serious.
No, honestly, though.
Bro.
It's the audacity.
Yeah. And I remember that. And I was just like, what? Like, that would check in my spirit. But then it makes me cringe inwardly. But I had to test that sense of humor at one point because it was that. If it wasn't that, it was my forehead is big, and are you losing your hair? And I remember,
and the thing is, everything that Kia's telling, I already know all of this, but retelling it makes me so angry all over again because it's. Anyways, continue.
Yeah. So I remember at one point I was just like, this is uneasy with me, but I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed that I was like dealing, like that I was putting up with this. So I obviously wasn't trying to share it all. But then I was like, okay, let me test this actually. Is this actually, I knew it wasn't a joke. Is this banter or are you being rude? So I took my petty self, rightfully so, and I said, this guy once again wanted to comment on my forehead. So I was just like, I took one look and I was like, I see your insecurity. And I called it right out. And my guy ran to the mirror and looked at it. Mid-phone call, mid-FaceTime, and was just like, really though? Really? I was like, mm-hmm. And I was holding back a laugh because I was just like,
oh, it's all bands.
It's all bands, you know, we're joking. I never heard about my forehead ever again after then. And that's when I realized, I'm like, oh, like you're trying to like bring me down for real. But yeah, that was another thing that I realized and just...
And sorry, one thing to even say in regards to that is I remember we would have conversations and she would tell me about these bands and not even that, like even smaller things. And I would be like, first I would say nothing. And then there would be times I'd be like, that's rude.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's really rude. Like, because I would think to myself, I'm like, if someone said that to me, like somebody that I'm seeing, if he said that to me, I would be upset. Like that would really upset me. But then you would be like, oh, it's just banter, it's just joking. And it started off with that a little bit, and then it got to the point where you were realizing it wasn't, and then you confronted that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so that was interesting.
Yeah. And then, just like the insulting of physical. Oh, and another thing too that I had realized too was just like, he would come from my culture, like be like, oh, Caribbean people don't have culture, so why do you want to be? But you told people you were from Trinidad and you're from West Africa once though, so why do you want to be though?
Like it's so
it's just embarrassing.
It's sad.
Yeah.
It's so sad. Like it's so sad that people have to do things like this. Like the insecurities, it's so sad that people do things like this. It's sad.
And I think ultimately, like I'm going into detail, like I'm going into examples, but the ultimate moral of this is that I realized like he was trying to step on my shoulders to make himself seem taller. Like that's what I realized it was initially, like trying to break me down to make himself look bigger, to make himself look more valuable. And honestly, it started working. Like
because you desired, it's like a manipulative tactic.
His manipulation paired with my desperation, paired with my impatience.
Yes.
So that was like a beautiful marriage for my own destruction. Yeah.
Wow. in terms of what I noticed during that time, because we're roommates, we live with each other, and like your personality, Kia's a blunt person. She's a like we have all the bands, and it's so because we're quite similar, but we're opposites in certain things. I'm more of like when I if I'm gonna, unless you've annoyed me, that's when I become blunt. But other than that, I'm more like to lay things to people in nicely served. Well, Kia is just blunt and to the point, and it's necessary. It is necessary at times. Like it's good. So your personality was no longer like I was seeing a different version of you. When after you would see him, you'd be back, and it was fine. But then I would just notice you were becoming more anxious. You were justifying like your confidence for yourself, like the things you were once happy and excited about doing, you would kind of see it as it wasn't important or it wasn't enough, those kind of things. So I began noticing that. Then I personally found out something very interesting about him on my own that I brought to your attention, and you were obviously upset as anyone should be. It was just like, wow. You then addressed it with him, and then when you addressed it with him, and I'm like, what after you? Because when your friends like you, I'm like, yo, you better lay it on him. Like what? Like I want to know what he has to say for this. Mm-hmm. And when you came out of that conversation, it's like you went in angry and you came out like a subdued lamb. Like it's fine. Like it's great. It's whatever. And I'm just like, I remember we were driving. I'm like, Kia, he's lying. Mm-hmm. He's absolutely lying. That's ridiculous. And you're just more like, you're just like, yeah, like, you're like, no, okay, we're gonna have another conversation. I'll bring it up again. It was just, I was like, in my head, I'm like, who is this person? Like, I don't, like, you were just a different version of yourself. Mm-hmm. And it was just like all the games he was playing and the control he was having over your emotions and how you viewed yourself. And another instance as well, like the way that, like, again, he was playing a game to manipulate you, and the effect it had, it was so saddening to me. It broke my heart, and it was hard because you would go into it like, yeah, absolutely, you're right. Like, you had your friends telling you, like, absolutely, you're right, this shouldn't be a thing. But then you would go in, and then, like, you would say this, he would talk me out of my common sense. Yeah. He would absolutely talk you out of your common sense. And it was so hard to see, and it was hard because I felt like I couldn't get through. I couldn't really, because it was like you weren't ready to receive it at all.
No, I wasn't.
So all I could do literally in those moments is like, I remember all the time I would be praying about this. I'm like, God, I would literally say, God, I hate this person. And hate is a very strong word. And it's not like I actually did, but I just hated who he was making you to become. I hated that so, so much. Like, I'd be like, God, if this is not it, like, destroy this relationship, like, have it end, because this is not, this can't be it, God. This is not it. This cannot be it. Like, seeing that from the outside. And yeah, so it was it was hard seeing that and like bringing it to your attention, but then you not really, like you saying, yeah, I'm going to address it, and saying you addressed it, but then it not really truly being addressed, or I felt like, I'm like, wow, this is something else, but leaving it into God's hands, because at the end of the day, I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna pray about this. Yeah. But sorry.
And I think, even to make a point on that, like, a key thing to like take away, which actually even will relate to the final conversation I had with him, is me having a problem in front of my face, going in my room, like the behind the scenes of that. Yes. Because I would go in angry. Absolutely. I would go in annoyed or whatever. But then I would go in there and have my conversation and, like you said, talked out of my common sense and completely, like, it was like word salad. It was literally like just like words being spilled at me to a point where I was drained. Like, the conversations were draining. It would be like an hour of trying to convince me otherwise, and then by the end I was just like, okay, whatever. Like, it was just draining. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely insane. Mm-hmm. Okay, so how did this relationship finally end? So how did this come to an end, essentially?
Yeah, so something like pivotal completely happened where I realized I was like, hey, decision has to be made right now. And like, it just so happened, because God is good, like after such a dramatic situation took place, like I was off for a whole week. So I had a free week, like distraction free, to just cry me a river, like to just literally just be to just have a clearer mind, I guess I will say, because the breakup didn't actually happen at this point yet.
Yes,
but I had some real prayers I had to pray and some real thoughts I had to think through. So there were like a few pivotal moments that took place that like really solidified my decision, that it was like really helped me realize the level of manipulation that was taking place, and really helped me realize like, Kia, you need to dip, like, come on now.
Yeah.
But the first one was, so I will say I have two dads, because I have my biological dad, he lives in another country, and then I have my stepdad, but I don't like calling my stepdad because
he's your dad.
That's demotion.
Yeah.
So I just have to make that point.
Yeah, I get you.
Yeah,
he's your dad. He's awesome.
Literally. So my dad, like my dad that lives in he lives in the States. So yeah, my dad who lives in the States. I remember my mom had called him and told him like, you need to talk to Kia because there's some nonsense going on. And like, if you know my family, like my family is just like, we're ridiculous. Everybody on both, like, we're just ridiculous. Like, anyway, so my dad called me and like, he made me laugh in my tears, because like, if you just know his personality, he was just like, Kia, come on now. He's like, there's nothing new under the sun. Like, you need to, and I don't advise you to continue on with this. Like, let this go. Like, this is, he said that in so many words. Yeah. So I was just like, no, you're right. Like, you're for real. So that was the one conversation I was like, okay, it really started to set in as I was crying on my bed eating flaming hot smart food. But that was the first one. And then the second one was actually talking to, so I went to my parents' house, and me and my stepdad were in the garage, and I remember he was just like to me, he's like, Kia, be honest with me, because he's also blunt. So he's just like, Kia, be honest with me. Is this someone that can like love you unconditionally? And I was like, no. He's like, I'm gonna tell you right now, no, he can't. Because like, as soon as he sees somebody that he perceives is gonna be better than you, I'm telling you right now, he's out of there. So you need to be out of there. And I was just like, it's true. He's like, when I met your mom, I knew exactly what I wanted, and I knew exactly how serious I needed to be. Do you not want that for yourself? And I was just like, you're right. And then I really had to like remember Ephesians 5:25, like the first part of that. Husbands, love your wives like Christ loves the church. How much did Christ love the church? He died for his bride. Sacrificial love. I could look at this situation and be like, there's not one sacrifice being made. I'm the freaking sacrificial lamb in this. I'm the one being like,
I get it.
You know what I mean? And in vain. It was in vain.
Yeah, and it's so funny because prior to this, we would talk about, like, you know, just in reading the word and studying it, like this verse and how beautiful it is. Like, husbands, love your wives like Christ loved the church. Like, what a beautiful love. Like, that sacrificial love that a husband is to have for his wife.
Right.
And
women respect your husband.
And women respect and honor your husbands, you know? Submit to your husbands. Yeah. And just, like, recognizing, like, that partnership and how beautiful that is when it works, when you both recognize what your role is in that. And so going into, you know, having the mindset like, oh yeah, that's what I want. Yeah. But then it's so crazy how sometimes you get into those relationships and that person is literally not, you say, God, this is what I want. And then God puts you in a position to be like, is it?
Right.
Because you're staying here.
Even like preparing for this podcast, I had to go back in old prayer journals and I looked back at where God has brought me from, and the prayers before that breakup, like the desperation prayers of, Lord, not can you make this work, but like, God, make this work, to like, just seeing that process of how he like brought me out. Yo, there's no one like him. But then after that, there was another conversation I had, and this is when at this point, this is when I was studying for my psych PhD, okay? My psych PhD.
As a joke, but like,
as a joke, but like, and at this point, my pseudo-psych degree, like my dissertation in narcissism, A+. Like, I passed that grade.
I was learning through, I was like, wow. What? Honestly, this is another story that will be talked about later on, maybe, but your knowledge, like literally your knowledge in narcissism helped me see narcissism in my own life. Yeah. Like, not like me being narcissistic, but someone being narcissistic to me. That was like an extremely important person in my life. And But yes, anyways.
Exactly. So it's when I talk to my therapist, and she's amazing, Caribbean lady, like she's just a nice woman. And I remember telling her my story raw, like literally had an hour booked, like she gave me an hour for free. We were just talking freely for 2 hours. And like after I told her the story, she was just like, Kia, you know that that's a manipulative narcissist, right? Like, she's like, you know that that's someone I couldn't even, like, if I had an hour session with, I couldn't wait for the hour to be done. Like, you dodged a bullet.
So there was another moment. So before, when you were talking about the pivotal moment that where you had to make your decision, so this was where you were like, okay, so seeing what you were going through, you were obviously incredibly upset. Like, it was heartbreak. It was painful, and it was so interesting because you were thinking you were taking accountability, but you were really, it was blame. You were taking all the blame. And so because you were also like just in a fragile place, I had to be careful with my words and how I was saying this, because I was ready. Let me tell you, I was ready to go to this man's place, destroy him. I was ready. I was ready. Like, I was to risk it all. But anyways, like, and it was interesting because it was like, I would try and ask you questions and it was just like met with like, no, you were trying to take accountability, but it was like, it didn't make sense. It's like, it's like you literally, you got to a point where you believed like you couldn't have conversations. And I was like, what are you talking about? What do you mean you can't have conversations? You have conversations all the time. We can have conversations.
I talk more than you, honestly.
And that's the point. I'm an extroverted one and Kia's the introverted one. Between the both of us, she talks more than I do. Yeah. I'm like, and like, not like that's like about, no, like that's just our personalities. Mm-hmm. So I was just like, wow, you're really taking this blame. And so so my thing I was trying to do was like ask her questions about this situation. Ask her like, but wait, do you think that's normal? Like, do you think this? And when you don't really want to hear it, you're just like, yeah, I guess so. But then have a rebuttal for why it is what it is for you in that regard. Mm-hmm. So I remember one time we went on a walk and we had got to the top of a hill. It's on the mountain top that God, no, I'm kidding. But it was on the top of this hill, like a nice big hill. And we were just sitting and talking, and it was interesting because it was like you became more comfortable with just explaining and exposing more of what he would do. And I just remember saying to you something along the lines of, but Kia, do you honestly think that's normal? Is it normal in a loving relationship for someone to make you feel this way about normal things? Is it normal for you in your career and your decisions that you want to do for someone to not encourage that? Like, there was just a lot of these things, and it was finally like a switch went off where it was hard, but I could tell there was a difference from that point forward. And then it's where you had all these conversations, and it was like confirming all of that. I just remember it finally clicking, because I just felt like before that I would try and it wasn't, and it just finally, it was clicking for you, and you're like, wow, yeah. And so that was really, really interesting.
Yeah. It was, no, because honestly it was like coming out of a fog. It was coming out of a fog, and like you saying, like I was finally feeling comfortable. I was feeling more comfortable to reveal things, but also at the same time, there were things I forgot. Like, I literally didn't even remember happened until like 2 or 3 weeks later.
That's, yeah.
Like, until after the fact. Like, there were things like I'd be like, oh, Debbie, did I tell you what happened? And
the things she would tell me. So it's already, from what I already experienced, like living with her and seeing what I could see, then her every day, every couple of hours, telling me something different about him that he had done or was doing. I couldn't believe it. And it makes me, like, I just couldn't believe what some people are capable of. Like, the level of manipulation and control to try and destroy somebody's confidence. Like, I just couldn't believe somebody is capable of that, and that just angered me. Like, it angered me it would anger anybody that somebody is capable of doing that, and doing that to my best friend, like doing that to somebody that I care about, that I love. That's like, oh man, I was ready to go to jail, fam. I was ready to go to jail, but I had to let God fight this battle. To let him. So so after realizing that the blame wasn't true accountability, what was the actual accountability that you had to basically work through? What did you have to work through to actually be accountable?
Like in true sense of the word.
Yes.
Honestly, the first thing I realized that it shouldn't have made it past the first date. Honestly, like, I will never share what happened. But it should not have made it past the first thing. If I'm being realistic.
Yeah.
But my girl was just like, my girl being Kia.
Yourself.
Me, I was literally just like, well, you know what? Like I said, my mantra, nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect. So it was just studied upon nobody's perfect. And I was just ready to just shove it under the rug. Like, I just had to shove whatever I was seeing under the rug. I was having boundaries. Like, I had my boundaries. I had my standards that I set. Like, but I was not failing to keep them. Like, ultimately, there wasn't a success in the ultimate boundary. But I would bend some of my boundaries in fear of offending people. Like, in fear of offending people. I'm like, I'm more willing to offend God. Or I'm more willing to offend God than offend somebody who literally wants the worst for me. Who literally is in it for themselves. Who wants to chew me up and spit me out. So that's what I realized. I was like, I was willing to bend my boundaries in order to make this work. And that's like a red flag. Like, that's unhealthy in itself.
Absolutely.
So that was another thing. I mentioned this in last week's episode, but just giving people so much benefit of the doubt when you're supposed to be getting to know somebody. Like, there's nothing wrong with benefit of the doubt. You should be gracious. You should be patient with people when you're getting to know them. But there's a difference between, what I realized is, like, you still have to guard your heart. Like, I had come from a place where I was completely walling my heart. But there's a difference. You don't wall your heart. Like, that means nobody can get in. Like, you have to guard your heart. Verse 4:23. That's a verse I've gone through to the years, but it's just so funny how, like, it became relevant again during this time. Like, it meant something again, but it's so simple. It's literally like, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Like, and that's wisdom right there. And I went from walling my heart to completely letting my guard down because for fear of becoming too closed off. But it's like, no, there's a balance. Like, there's a balance.
That balance is so often sometimes as people, as I would say as females, I'm going to speak as females, is we allow too much. We allow, like, be willing to leave. Like, be willing to leave as soon as you see red flags. Be willing to disappear. Like, be willing to be like, I'm not going to stand for this at all. Like, those are very, like, that's the thing. You have to be willing to leave. Yeah. And
then that even just ties into desperation. Like, if I was being honest, I had to be accountable with myself and with God and in prayer. I'm like, I'm moving real desperate and it's not cute or becoming. Like, this needs to end now. This is not a good look. And that's the reason why I was in there for so long, because I'm just like, I want this so badly. I want this so bad. God, can you not see that I want this? Like, make this happen. If you don't make this happen by force, I'm going to make it happen. I'm stamping your approval on it. Because it will look good on paper. So I just had to really put my desperation at the altar and be honest with myself about that and just be like, swallow my pride and be like, yeah, you're acting real desperate. Like, that was how I had to be accountable to myself. Another way, I realized, like, after the fact, I like the idea of him and what I thought he stood for. And then when the mask was slipping and when I started to realize that it was a facade, instead of just cutting, like leaving, I would overlook it and just, like I said, the same line, this person's just human, no one's perfect. Withholding truth from friends and family. Like I said, a lot of it I buried. Like, I didn't even remember it until after, but there was a lot of things that I withheld because I'm just like, well, I already know the answer, but I know what I want to do, so I'm just going to allow it. And I'm just going to soldier through this by myself. So, that was another thing, which is ridiculous. God places accountability in your life for a reason. If when this person was yelling at me, accountability, I was blaming myself instead of running to my accountability and instead of actually holding myself accountable, because the people in my life that would hold me accountable would tell me to dip. Like, absolutely. Absolutely. That was another thing. And then just honestly, this is a point for this person of me not being fair to them. Just like not wanting to let go of the fact that I did realize we had nothing in common. Like, I remember one particular instance where a monologue was taking place as per usual. And I'm sitting there and I'm nodding and, like, all I'm hearing is literally Charlie Brown's teacher. I'm just hearing Charlie Brown's teacher. My eyes are hollow. I'm staring through this person. So I'm just like, you love yourself, eh? Like, and not in a healthy way. Like, yo, you love yourself. You actually could care less about what I have to say. You just want to big yourself up right now. I'm just sitting there, I'm nodding, and I'm just like, okay. But I just wanted it so badly. I was just like, well, whatever.
Wow.
That's a low place. That's a low place. I'm realizing.
Yeah.
I hate that for me at that point.
But from that to where you were now, like, wow. It's incredible because God uses these experiences often to heal us and get us back on track.
Yeah.
And it sucks, but oh man, like this testimony is absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
It's absolutely incredible because it opened your eyes and opened my eyes and many other people's eyes to what happens when you get into a relationship with a narcissist. What happens when you get in a relationship with someone, because a narcissist is someone who's so deeply insecure that, like you said, they need to stand on the shoulders of somebody else to feel better about themselves.
Yeah.
It is dangerous, and it's so sad that someone could be at a place of such insecurity that they need to make other people feel less than. Yeah. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
I mean, that manipulation, that control, like, you know what, like, everyone should have their own agent. Like, everyone is made to make their own decisions.
Free will and autonomy.
Free will, exactly.
God gives us a free will.
And autonomy.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
But then for somebody to try and control you and manipulate you through actions, words, bring you down, like, that's witchcraft. It is. That's just, it's wickedness. It's wickedness. And saying this because I saw what happened. You experienced this, and then I got front row seat to it, and it was the worst. It was the worst thing to see. It's the worst. Wouldn't wish this on my enemy. It was terrible. But wow, to see where you are now, like, so much stronger, wiser, like, wow. I think with some of the notes, and like, we're looking at our notes because there's so much.
Yeah, honestly.
There's so much. So I think we're gonna go into like your final thing. Yeah, we can actually go into it now. Like,
the final conversation.
So yes, there was a point, like, he was like, a lot of the games, avoiding conversation where you needed to make, you're ready to make your decision.
Yeah.
And you needed to make that known, but then he was avoiding, playing games, did all of this.
Because my guy knew it was coming, but he was trying to buy time, and I was just like, you're not buying any more time. Like, and I'm like, don't get me wrong, I was crying, but like, my mind was made up, bro. Like, it was done for. But yeah, he was trying to buy time. So I remember this night specifically. So going back to me being annoyed, going in my room, having a conversation, and then coming out subdued, but really it's just low-key anxiety, just now exhausted. I made a point, I was like, nah. If this person was supposed to call me at a certain time and was avoiding the call, so I was like, no, I'm calling this person at this time because I have to go to bed. Like, I'm tired. I work tomorrow. And this conversation needs to take place. So I remember I was like, because I was in a weak place. I was like, Debbie, I'm going to sit on this edge of the couch. You're going to sit on the other edge. I'm putting my headphones in. You're not going to hear this full conversation, but I need someone here with me so I'm not talked I'm not talked in circles again. Yeah. Because I know what I'm vulnerable to right now. Yeah. So yeah, we had a conversation, and you didn't even hear the full conversation.
I only heard Kia's half. And again, just from hearing Kia's half at that point, I was so angry. I was ready to take the phone from her and be like just say every worst thing I ever could say to him. I was so angry, but I had to keep my calm because I'm like, she needs to do this on her own. She has to be the one to do this on her own, because the way that he has presented himself, he's going to just use like someone else coming in for her as a way, like, I don't know, just trying to use it against you. I don't know. It wouldn't even matter. You know what I mean?
Because another thing that this person would do to like kind of manipulate like even reactions would be like, and I never ever was like, I can honestly say I was never disrespectful to this person.
No, you were not. You were too nice. You were too nice. Oh.
Shoot. Anywho, if I could turn back time. But anywho, we learn. But I remember having this conversation and like never being disrespectful, but I realized this person would be like, normally a person would cuss me out at this point, but or like people don't know how to control their emotions. They just like to go off the handle, whatever. In this conversation, I made my points clear. I made my issues clear, and I made the point clear that this ain't gonna work anymore. And for an hour later,
it was a good hour, maybe an hour and a half. Kia said what she needed to say, probably a total of 20 minutes. If that, the rest of it was him talking bare tomfoolery, foolishness, nonsense, every kind of, like, I just couldn't believe it. I was shocked.
But it was berating though, because you didn't actually even hear what was being
until you
said,
told me to.
Until I told you.
Hey!
But I realized I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, like at that point,
manipulating scripture too.
Manipulating scripture like I'm a true demon. But like, sorry, he needs help. I need help. I need help. This is very. Anywho,
yeah.
But I remember, like, even though I was in that moment, I was silent. It clicked for me. I was like, I see exactly what you're doing. You're trying to rile me up, so I can then
you can be the one at fault,
disrespectful, and then you can play victim. And it's not gonna happen. Not on my watch.
Not on my watch.
You went for the slap on the table.
Not on my watch.
So you hear that one? Just that made me the slap. I'm crying. No, for real.
No, not on my watch. So at that moment, I realized that, and it's so funny because what I suspected was true. Because after the beratings, it was just like, wow, you really are emotionally mature, huh? You didn't even it's ridiculous at this point. But I like you didn't even like rebuttal back, and I was just like, yeah, I gotta go to bed. And then I remember after, like, he was just like, yeah, if you don't want to talk to me anymore, just tell me you're emotionally weak. And then after getting off that phone call, completely drained. It was Twilight Zone. I'm telling you, like, again, just not the Kia I know. Just was drained, subdued. And I remember saying, like, block him on everything. You know when you have to just slowly open your hands and, like, take the phone, block him on everything. It was a smoking gun you had to take out of my hands.
Literally.
Honestly.
Block him on every single thing. And we're like, oh, okay. But it was so much, like, you know when in cartoons when they have like the bird tweeting above, like that's what it looked like. You were just like, yeah, it was insane. So you blocked him.
Yeah.
And then she blocked him on everything, but then he found a way to contact her. And your final message of what you said to him, hey, I was just like, like, I was just like, it wasn't even disrespectful in any way. It was just it was short and sweet, to the point, calling it out, but then, like, don't ever, like, it's done, it's finished. It's truly, it was wonderful. It was so wonderful. And that was it. That was essentially it.
That was it. Honestly,
it was just after that was the process of healing.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we're not gonna pretend like it was all like sunshine and roses after that. It was hard. It was like, not only just because at that point it's so crazy. Like, on my week off, I realized that, like, hey, this is not the person for me. But then after healing is like taking accountability for yourself, and then going through therapy and talking to friends and talking to God and being
recognizing
like, why
what they
am I
did.
at this? Recognizing what they did. But then also coming back to yourself, why am I at a place where I'm taking this? What's wrong? Like, what am I dealing with? What do I actually need to work through? So that was like kind of the bulk of healing after. But I'm so grateful for that period, because sometimes it's so crazy. Like, and I think we were talking about it in our second episode, about sometimes when the times are so good, you can, God, like, he, not on the back burner, but like, on the back burner. Like, you'll be on the back burner sometimes. Sometimes you actually have to be like, and he doesn't do this to you, like, because he wants to, like, but like, he's not even close at all. But you have to get to a low, like, the scripture that says, God's close to the brokenhearted is not a lie. Like, you will feel his presence crazy in that time, and it will renew your relationship with him. And it's, like I said, it's actions that you've made in your own free will and your own doing that brought you to this place. But he's so loving, he's there with open arms. Yeah. So that terrible situation, like, refreshed my relationship with God. Yeah. So that's ultimately what came from that. And just like a renewal of mind, like, girl, I have the best for you. Why are you on the struggle bus? Come on. Yeah. So yeah, that was that.
Wow.
That was sad.
That is, what an experience that was. But ultimately, like what the devil meant for evil, God turned into good because, again, so much was learned. This podcast was birthed from this. Like, it was amazing. Like, I mean, that was not amazing, but it's amazing what God does.
Yeah.
In the midst of whatever you're going through. Like, man.
Yeah.
It was incredible.
Yeah.
It was incredible.
It really was.
Yeah.
So that's that experience. I mean, we have final takeaways, but before we get to that, we want to go into Debbie's experience. So not on the same level at all, but disappointment is still disappointment. It might not be like it's not a heartbreak, but it's still disappointment. So do you want to talk about your own personal experience?
Yeah. So like you're saying, it wasn't heartbreak, but it was disappointment, and disappointment can still really hurt because hope deferred makes the heart sick. So when you're desiring something and hopeful, like again, we were both in the same place of desiring something so much that things can happen. So this was kind of a little bit after your situation and how you're in this process of healing and in a better place. And I remember this was the point where I was like, yeah, I'm done with these apps. I'm ready to delete it. I'm done. And this guy just snuck his way through. He just snuck his way through, before I really finally deleted it. And he didn't like fill out all the boxes that I wanted at all. But I was just more like, I was attracted to the charm and something about him. I don't know. But basically, he had said something as well that was a red flag for me that I was like, what the heck? No, I'm not about this. But I figured because I was telling him my boundaries and what I was about, that typically when I would say my boundaries and some of the things I'm about, the guys would dip and I'll be like, done, whatever, great, this is easy. That was easy. But he didn't. He would linger, and in fact was like more, So I was like, okay, like, and when you want God to bless your foolishness, yeah, that's what I was doing. I want God to bless this foolishness. So this was also something I'm like, I wish if I had cut this off, I wouldn't have even had to deal with like just the annoyance of all of it. But and the thing is too, deep down inside, I knew this wasn't it. I knew that this wasn't for me. And I remember bringing talking to you about it. And so because Kia was fresh out of the healing of her nonsense, like Kia was
Kia was back.
Blunt Kia was back. Kia was just like, no, like absolutely not. And I was just like, please be patient.
I know, and I'm just like, be patient or be quiet.
Be quiet. Will you keep quiet?
But could I judge you though? Because I wanted you to be quiet for months, But
so yeah, like I wanted her to just like, allow me to just figure this out. Let me figure this out, because I'm like, also I kind of was justifying, like, well, my boundaries are very clear, like nothing's going beyond that, but I was entertaining nonsense. I was entertaining what I didn't need to entertain. And like, kind of like, again, like the bar is in Hades when people do the bare minimum. Would be consistent with calling and talking and getting to know each other, which was really fun. It was good. It was nice and all of that. But again, I knew deep down inside that this wasn't it. I knew this. And I was entertaining this, and it became harder and harder for me to cut him off, in addition to being very frustrated with God. You imagine, when you see a child having a tantrum in the store and they're wailing and everything, and you're just looking at the child like, we have to have grace on these families and parents. But
it's a teacher, right?
Yeah, I know, I'm a teacher, and I have to remind myself, like, wow, children. Yeah. I love children, but children, But I just felt like I was saying to God, I was like, God, I'm out here trying my best. I'm doing the best that I can, and you're not even meeting me where I am. Like, you do not care. I was so angry. Like, I was like tugging on his robe.
Imagine, like, on his leg.
Like literally, like, make this work, because because people, you will hear stories about how people have had experiences where the person wasn't exactly it, but then God made it work out, but that may not be your story. That's not like that isn't my story. That isn't my story, but I wanted it to be my story so badly. So I was having a huge tantrum with God at this point. But yeah, eventually though, Kia's words were, like, God was using Kia to, like, eventually they were, like, I knew you were right. I knew you were right, and I knew I had to I knew that I couldn't keep this up. I was like, I'm tired. I was at a point, I was also so tired of this nonsense. I was tired of feeling like I didn't have peace.
Yeah.
I was tired of feeling frustrated with God. I was just tired of all of these feelings.
And I remember, sorry to interject, but I just want to say, like, even in talking to you about it, like, especially after what I had gone through, I realized the importance of, like, I should have gotten out earlier. So I know, like, how...
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, the longer you talk to someone, the longer you, like, stay in an area of temptation, the more
it's easier.
It's easier to compromise. It's easy, and it's harder to get out of it.
Yeah.
So after experiencing, like, slowly, like, a snake just, like, whatever, or, like, and fangs, like, digging in deeper, like, over time, I was like, bro, like...
Don't allow the fangs to dig. And I was basically like, the fangs are not digging deep. Like, it's fine. They were digging small. They were still digging small because why? I didn't need to entertain this. I just didn't need to entertain it. And, like, honestly, the guy did literally nothing wrong. It was just I didn't need to entertain this conversation, and I was entertaining it. And so I remember just praying to God, being like, God, I'm willing to settle because I'm so tired, and I'm in a place, again, like we've been saying this, of desperation. So, like, at this point, I hope you guys know the moral is please be confident who you are in Christ. Don't be desperate, because when you're desperate, you're gonna get hurt.
You know, the animals can smell that, eh?
Yeah,
like... It's not cute.
It's not cute or becoming. It's not cute or becoming. So yeah, I remember just praying to God and being like, I need you to get me out of this. I need you to change my mindset again. I need you to help me where I'm at, because I am struggling. And it was interesting because right around that time, I was reading Jackie Hill's a new book she had called Holier Than Thou, and wow, one of the quotes that really resonated with me at that time was, if God is holy, then he can't sin. If God can't sin, then he can't sin against you. And if he can't sin against you, you shouldn't make him shouldn't that make him the most trustworthy being there is? Straight up. God is holy. He is perfect. There's nothing comes close. And so because he is so holy and so loving, why am I, again, putting all this blame onto him when I'm not finding contentment where I am, when I'm lacking, like when the faith is just depleted, I have no hope. Like that was just, I was at a really low place, but it was never like as if God wasn't there for me, as if he didn't care, as if he was doing this to be cruel. Not at all.
Yeah.
And that whole entire book, if you, like, I highly recommend you read it, because it was such a pivotal moment for me where God just really renewed my mind. And it was so good. And it was crazy because after that prayer too, there were so many little things where God was just telling me, I hear you. Just trust me. Just trust me and wait. And I remember one of the things that I think is just so important is peace of mind. When you don't have peace of mind and then you finally get peace of mind, it's one of the best feelings you can ever have, because you're not anxious. Your thoughts are not running wild. I was at peace finally. Yeah. So, and then I also recognized my fault in it. I was making marriage and my desire for a family, a healthy, loving family, which there's nothing wrong with that as desire. It's beautiful. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
You know, like we've discussed, like you want to build a healthy, loving legacy.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that, but there's a problem when it becomes bigger than God. And that's what I had done. I completely made it an idol, and I didn't think I had. That was the thing. I tried to convince myself that I hadn't, but then it was God saying, yes, you have. You absolutely have. So yeah, it was good. So it was just also interesting how eventually, like, the conversations I was having with this guy at that time were kind of annoying me. They were just pissing me off. I was just like because my mindset had finally changed, I was no longer tolerating it, and I just was like, hey, it's nice talking to you, but like we don't want the same things, which we both agreed on. Yeah. Like there was the convincing of, yeah, we do, but like, no, we ultimately didn't. And so from there, it was done. And so we thank God. Yeah, it's just so grateful to where God had brought me from to now. So like, yeah. So let's get into the lessons learned ultimately.
Yeah, so I would say the first one, so there's a YouTuber that I watch, her name's Tiffany Buckner, and I remember there's a quote she always says, and it says, don't marry someone's potential and divorce their reality. Mm-hmm. And when you're so caught up on wanting a relationship leading to marriage and so desperate for that, that's exactly what you're gonna do. Like, you see the potential, you're like, you know what, God? It's gonna look good on paper. It's fine, this is good enough for me. He knows it's not. He's not even gonna allow that for you. But he knows it's not. Yeah. But you're just like, nah, it is what it is. I'll deal with that reality later, God. Like, just make it happen for me. But that is something that just stuck out to me. That was a lesson that I learned. Like, that you cannot do. If you want something healthy, if you want something that's going to be not in vain, something that's gonna be solid foundation, you need to take someone for face value.
Exactly. And you want to be equally yoked.
Exactly.
Right? You want someone who has the same values and actually not just says it, but actually shows that in their actions.
Yeah.
Another one is you can give someone benefit of the doubt without ditching your discernment. Mm-hmm. So often you, like, when you look back, you always can see where you knew this wasn't it. You knew that this was problematic. You discerned it, but then you ignored it. Because you want to constantly give them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
Stop. It has to stop.
Yeah.
We can't do that.
Exactly.
You can't do that.
Yeah. And then another thing is, don't let someone talk you out of your common sense.
Yeah.
Like, you know what you know. Like, Holy Spirit, as a Christian, the Holy Spirit lives within you. Like, he gives you unctions. Like, he gives you checks in your spirit when something's wrong. He gives you approval in your spirit when something is right. So if you know that you know, don't then let somebody talk you out of your common sense because you just want something to work so badly. You just want to ignore it. That's stupid, and you're quenching God-given wisdom.
Wow. Yeah. So, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then utilizing good friendships and family members in your life. So important that, like, God has placed those people in your life for a reason. Mm-hmm. Don't shut them out. Don't keep those things private because you don't want to hear the reality or the truth. And because in some of these relationships where the person is trying to manipulate and control, they want to isolate you intentionally. They want to isolate you so that their words you're going to get talked into your common sense with your friends and family. They're going to talk you into your common sense. But then if you're being isolated by someone who's a master manipulator or controller, they are going to take you out of that. So it's so important that you utilize these good friendships and family members in your life, and because it's just not worth it. It's just not worth it.
And then also just realizing, like, we need to tattoo on our hearts God's true character and his thoughts towards his children. Yeah. The first one being that he wants the best for us.
Truly.
Like, there's so many times in his words where he says he delights in his children. He loves you. Like, his love is sacrificial. He
guides you.
Yeah.
He has good plans for you.
Yeah. His word is a lamp to your feet.
Yeah.
Like, he has a path for you.
Yeah.
So that has to be tattooed in our hearts. That really has to be ingrained in our thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's hard. It's easy to, because we get distracted by the world so often. We get distracted by our desires that we we forget about that. You start to place your own ideas of God onto him, onto his character. Also, he corrects those he loves. He truly does correct those he loves. Like, a good parent is going to correct and discipline their child because they want their child to be the best version of themselves. If you allow a child to run rampant, like, the child is not the boss of the house. The parent needs to be the one in control because they have the wisdom, they have the understanding, they understand more than a child does. A child can't drive a car. A child can't cook on the stove. Like, of course at certain ages, but you have to correct your child. A loving, good parent will do that. And that is said, and the thing is, when you're getting corrected, no one likes to get corrected. You don't want to be told off. You don't want to be told that this is what you need to do. And the word talks about this. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. Hebrews 12:11. So, that is, like, wow, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Like, it sucks, but then later on, like, this whole experience that we're talking about, later on you look back and you're like, wow, that was not pleasant.
Yeah.
That wasn't pleasant.
Yeah.
But it has now produced a harvest.
Honestly.
Wow. Sure, and you're going to reap from that harvest.
Yeah.
Wow.
And other people can be assisted from that harvest.
Amen.
Like, if one person learns from this, then your work is done.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Obedience, yielded something. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
It's good. And then ultimately, it's just realizing, you have to replace the idol of romantic relationship with God and his will for our lives. Like, he wants the best for you, right? We just establish that.
Yeah.
So we have to trust that he's not a sadistic God who likes to tease us with our desires.
Absolutely.
And not actually come through. So his desire is not to give you everything you want, but rather for him to make you the best version of yourself. He wants us to be Christ-like. He wants us to be who he's called us to be for his glory and for his will. So it's either I'm going to continue clinging onto my desires, breaking my own heart. That's what I realized. Like, that was actually the turning point. Why am I breaking my own heart? It's not even that person anymore. Why am I breaking my own heart? That's the accountability that I need to take for myself. So are we gonna continue going down this path of breaking our own heart, stumbling into nonsense? Or am I gonna just surrender this will for my life and accept his? If I believe that he wants the best for me, then I need to truly believe that and walk that out.
Amen. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Wow. So that is all for episode 4, which was, this was probably one of, like, I think this was such a good conversation. Like, one of my favorites, because it was really hard even leading up to this to have this kind of conversation, like in terms of discussing what we wanted to talk about. But just believing that it's so necessary, that if you are seeing any of the things that have been mentioned as well in a relationship that you're in, it is better for you to heal and separate yourself from that than to be in a relationship where you are degraded and felt less than. That is not at all God's plan for anyone's life. So we just hope and pray that this blesses you and that you found some help in this. So that is the end of episode 4. We hope that you guys are tuning in next week again for episode 5. Have an excellent day and take care.
Bye, guys.